Hi guys, and welcome back to Belle's Books. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is my first video of 2021, which is so exciting. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the 20 best books I read in 2020. So before we get started, please do like this video and subscribe. It would mean so much to me. I'm so close to 500 subscribers, which is really exciting. If you have any book recommendations for me at all, then please do leave them in the comment section down below. So I've got 4 categories of books today: fantasy, science fiction, realistic fiction, and romance, because those just happen to be the sections from which my 20 favourite books came from. So these are books I read this year, not necessarily published this year, but I discovered them this year for the first time. So to kick off with fantasy, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So this is a fantasy novel which tells the story of a few different characters and kind of interweaves their lives together in short vignettes and short stories and different chapters until everything ties together neatly at the end, which was my favourite part of the entire book. Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, which is Twilight told from the perspective of Edward. This was an incredibly long fantasy book, but I absolutely loved reading it because it just kind of transported me back to the first time I read Twilight, and I absolutely loved that series. So it was a really fun trip down memory lane. I would definitely reread that book. Next on my list is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This is a trilogy of 3 books which I read in a couple of weeks, I think in September or October, and I absolutely loved every second of reading that. The stories that he writes are weird, they're really strange, but it basically tells the lives of these 2 characters, and they accidentally get transported to a parallel universe, and in this universe strange things are happening, and they both kind of have this sense that they have to get back to their true lives where they can be together. So next up is Men Without Women by Haruki Murakami, and this was a selection of short stories, 7 short stories in 1 volume, and I read this after I read 1Q84, and I really picked up because I learnt that I love his writing style. I'll be definitely reading a few more of his works in 2021. So next up is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. So it's about a parallel universe, London, which exists beneath the real London, and this man kind of ends up transported there but doesn't really want to be there, and so he tries to make his way back to his original London, but he finds that quite difficult, and various challenges thwart him as the story goes on. I love the creepiness of this book, and I love the strangeness of some of the characters. I think Gaiman's creativity really shone through in this novel. The last fantasy book on the list is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and Cassandra Clare is the author of all the Shadowhunter universe books, and I absolutely love her writing style, and I love the universe that she writes in. So moving on to science fiction. The very first science fiction book I read in 2020 was The 100 Day 21 by Cass Morgan. So this is of course the book series on which the TV series is based, and I read this on the recommendation of my younger brother, and I loved this series. The books are quite short, and it was just a great way to kick off 2020, reading a series that was just really fun and really well written. So next up on the list is The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. So obviously this is a classic, it's not necessarily new by any stretch of the imagination, but I really was pleasantly surprised by this book. I found the story really intriguing. I found that the ideas in it were quite unique, and it was fun to see where kind of classic science fiction tropes came from. So next on the list is Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. I read this right at the end of 2020. I really enjoyed reading this book because I loved the first book, so it was fun to kind of be immersed in the same world. I also really like the writing style of Ernest Cline. I feel like the way he writes kind of carries you into the book's adventure and makes you feel like you want to be a part of it, you don't want to put the book down. It's very bingeable, if that makes sense. Railhead by Philip Reeve. So this is kind of steampunk kind of science fiction, and it's about this railway that connects various universes and worlds together in space. And the thing I loved most about this book was the relationship between the 2 characters and how it kind of built off of each other to bring something better into the world they were living into. So next on the list is Arrival by Ted Chiang, which I don't have much to say about, but I would recommend that you read it, especially if you enjoyed the movie, because I feel like the book is just as excellent and you should show the author some appreciation. Did I say The Circle already?
No.
Okay, so next up is The Circle by Dave Eggers, and this is kind of 1984 style dystopian future. The machines are taking over, we've become mindless human beings. I really empathized with the character, and as their entrapment and entanglement with technology kind of increased, I found myself rooting for them and almost panicking. It was a heart-wrenching story by the end of it. The Thousandth Floor by Catherine McGee. These teenagers who live in this high-rise 1,000-floor building skyscraper in New York, distant future, where kind of humanity has to live in these very tall buildings, and the most rich people live at the top and the poorest people live at the bottom, and it's about the rise and fall within society. Wanderers by Chuck Wendig, and I published this book review just a couple of weeks ago, I think, and I loved this book. If you are looking for a really good science fiction book to get your teeth into, kind of end of the world, I would really recommend this. So I really loved each individual aspect of this book, but I also loved the way that it is all brought together at the end of the novel. My favourite realistic fiction books, first of all we have The Monk of Mocha by Dave Eggers. So he was the guy who wrote The Circle, which I also really enjoyed, and The Monk of Mocha is basically about a man who decides he wants to run a coffee business. The next book on this list is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a very long, very sad book about the lives of 4 friends who live in New York. I think it's in the 90s. The author didn't make any pretense that things were going to turn out okay, and things didn't really turn out okay for a lot of the characters, and as heartbreaking as that was, I think it was also really excellently executed. It's now on the list of actually I think my all-time favourite books as well. Finally, we have the romance novels I read this year. So I do read quite a lot of romance alongside science fiction and fantasy. The Mountain Between Us by Charles Martin. And this is the heartbreaking story of 2 people who are stranded on a mountain in the middle of a blizzard, and how they must escape and survive, and what they do to escape and survive, and how their lives kind of turn out. They're both avoiding things back home that they don't really want to deal with, and those things that they're avoiding kind of come to be revealed in the course of the novel. The next romance is A Fire Sparkling by Julianne McLean, and this is a kind of fusion between historical fiction and modern fiction as 2 stories intertwine in 5 years by Rebecca Searle, and this is a book which I found really interesting. So basically, there's a little bit of time travel involved, accidental time travel. I read it during the summer and it was a very fun, kind of light-hearted summer romance read. This is Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan, and this is the author of Crazy Rich Asians, and I love that series. I love that movie. I absolutely love his fun, flirty writing style, and I just think that his books are so much fun to read. So I really enjoyed this new romance, and I would recommend that you read it too, especially if you're looking for something a little more light-hearted. I have had so much fun reading this year, and I can't wait to start some new books in 2021. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe and like before you go. Bye!